I really want to thank our sponsors. This event would not be possible without having Tri-Cities Community Health be our premier sponsor for this event. They do have a table in the back, and so at break time, please drop by and thank them for their sponsorship and learn a little bit more about what they do to help folks in our community. In addition, the Three Rivers Convention Center has given us an amazing deal on being able to host this here, and the Lord's Health Network is also a sponsor. And once again, Spectrum is back taping this. They'll be taking each segment, editing it down to a YouTube segment so that each of the 4 presentations will be a YouTube segment. So you can share that with your colleagues. Some of you may want to share that with your friends, colleagues, or in your organization. So that will be, again, done courtesy of Spectrum, and we appreciate them doing that. So without any further information to you, I'd like to start with our first speaker. So much of our life is shaped by our early experiences, and we are very fortunate to have Erin Tomlinson with us from Educational Service District 123. She's going to be talking about babies built for success. Thank you, Erin.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here. Can you guys hear me okay? First of all, I was looking out in the audience, and it's so nice to see familiar faces, and just to know that so many of us have worked together for so long in our community to help prepare children to be ready for school and to be successful. And I know so many of us here tonight are parents as well. And so when we think, I want to make sure we're on the first slide here, Kim. Okay. When we think about babies built for success, there is no doubt that parents are their child's first, most important, most influential teacher they will ever have in their lifetime. And when you think about from the moment that child is born, what's happening between the interaction with that parent and that child and other loving and caring adults in that child's life, it's just absolutely laying that foundation for all of the experiences that child is going to have in the next few years. Hopefully those experiences are positive ones that are going to build these amazing connections in that baby's brain. For all the years that I've been working with families and been so passionate about early learning, I have yet to meet a parent that doesn't absolutely want the very best for their child and love that child unconditionally. Sometimes it doesn't appear that way. Not all parents are in the best place in their life when they become parents. But regardless of socioeconomic backgrounds, regardless of cultural differences, regardless of what the situations may be in that parent's life, if we're approaching parents from an early childhood standpoint, for those of us that are working with families, if we're approaching them first and foremost from that standpoint that we know they love them and they want the best for them, I think that just in starting out with our work is one of the most important things we can do to help parents be the best parent they can be. And a lot of parents just don't even understand how important these early years are. So that's why I'm really excited to be able to do the work that I do and to share that information with families and with others who are working with families. But I do recognize that I am preaching to the choir tonight, and there are so many experts out there, and so I hope I'm able to leave you with something helpful or something that will resonate with you as we all work together to support the children in our community. Okay, so the first 5 years are really critical. Learning begins at birth. There's that saying that children are either learning or they're sleeping. That is so true the first 5 years. If they're not asleep, they're learning. And so we want those awake hours in that child's life to be filled with moments that help build these critical brain connections. And when parents are engaging in love with their child, acts of love, and talking to their child and singing to their child and playing with their child, from the moment that child's born, they're helping to build those critical connections. These first 3 years in particular are really the foundational years that shape that baby's brain. And I'm going to go into some more detail about what that looks like. But when you think about the baby's ability to respond, the baby's ability to learn, to have the opportunity for positive growth, socialization. Those first 3 years and those interactions are really what help shape the child's ability for their lifetime to be successful in all of those areas. Direct impact on how children develop their learning skills is taking place then. And so as we're working with parents with the work that we do, I think just sometimes meeting parents where they're at and helping them understand that if they're doing nothing else but engaging in that positive love and interaction with their child, they're doing the absolute most important thing they can be doing at that time. Now, there are more things they can be doing as well. They can be reading 20 minutes a day with their child. They can be playing with purpose. They can be doing all of these other positive things that build on that positive interaction. But a lot of times we're working with families in the community who are not at the place to be able to absorb those next steps yet. And so by just working with families to help them understand that by loving their child, they're doing the most important thing, and what does that love look like, is just really critical. The Center on Developing Child from Harvard University has spent years doing research on these critical early years and the kind of brain development that takes place. And they've come up with 3 core concepts through all of their research. And the first is that experiences build brain architecture. They shape the child's development, recognizing that experiences begins at birth, as I mentioned. So no moment is lost in terms of building that brain architecture in the child. The experience determines the expression of their child's genes. And there's so much work being done now, even with epigenetics out in the research field, that's where they're starting to determine that oftentimes now your experiences as a parent will have a genetic impact on your child. And so again, when you're looking at these little neurons and these connections being made, I think of it as, kind of dot to dot in a child's brain. We want those dots, we want experiences to repeat themselves, positive experiences, so that the connections are made and they're lasting connections. As a child has many positive experiences, it helps that brain architecture grow in the right way. But if a child's having a lot of negative experiences, it halts that progression for the positive growth. Toxic stress plays a large part in that. And in that, when children are in an environment where there's positive stress, that's kind of normal stress that takes place, and they can deal with that. That's some of your daily stress and the things that might stress each of us. Changes in our schedule, maybe when we get hungry, that type of thing. And then there's what they call tolerable stress. And that can be conflict in the home or illness, but it's something that's going to have a finite period of time. And the child's going to be able to recover from that, and the family's going to be able to recover from that. But what's so harmful for these early connections in the child's brain is what's called toxic stress. And that's that chronic, intense, prolonged stress. Very often for young children, when that's happening, they're in the absence of like a warm, loving caregiver type of relationship at the same time. Many of these kids who are in homes where there's abuse and mental illness, and this point in time where parents are not at their best, are often not with their parent. They're often put in another family member's home, or they're put in a foster care situation. And this toxic stress, whether it be emotional or physical stress on that child, really does interrupt those critical brain connections that need to take place in the first 3 years. And so when we think about building the brain and some of the other organ systems in that child, if toxic stress remains there, it's going to impair their health, it's going to impair their ability to learn, it's going to impair their intellect throughout their adult years as well. And so we really have tried to work hard as a community to wrap ourselves around ACEs. And what does this mean for the children that we're serving? And how do we come together as an early learning community and serve these families and educate parents and help kind of get behind parents to provide them with the support that they need, so that when they're in that place in their life where children may be faced with toxic stress, we're helping to build them with tools to work through that stress and not have it interrupt those early brain connections. The third area that has come out of this study is this concept of serve and return and how that interaction shapes brain circuitry. If you think about your time with your child when they were a baby, how does a baby serve? A baby may look at you, a baby may smile, a baby may notice a light or something hanging from the ceiling. All of those are serves. And the return is how you, as the loving adult in their life, respond to that. The same thing happens in an early learning setting, whether it be a preschool or a childcare setting. A child may serve by showing an interest in a game or a toy or playing with another child. And the return is how you respond to that. And with the research that's taking place right now, they're really realizing how important that concept of serve and return is to developing the child's brain. Knowing that if the child is initiating something that someone else is responding to and noticing and caring about and wanting to interact with that child, that's not only building a bond between that caregiver or that parent and the child, but it's also building a sense of importance of what the child's interested in, and it's creating self-esteem and confidence in that child, and it's helping the child become interested in the world around them. And so really that attentive, responsive, caring adult in the child's life is so critical to their healthy development. And I know when we talk about early learning and why that's so important, I hope that gives you a picture of what we want every child to feel like as they begin to come into the school environment. When kids come into kindergarten, teachers see really a wide range of abilities in kids. And there's so much talk in our community right now about being ready for kindergarten and what that means. But really what it means is that you have kids coming from a place who are and they're ready to learn. Every child developmentally is at a different place in terms of what that means. But if the foundation of being ready to learn is feeling loved and coming from a safe and secure home, then they're coming into that classroom completely ready socially and emotionally to move forward. You know, I can't believe my kids are as old as they are now. I've got one in college, one in high school, and one in middle school. And I just don't even know how that's happened. Really. So in my heart, they're still that little, which is a good thing when they're teenagers, because you kind of need that. But I think back to when my first daughter was born, and people would talk to me about kindergarten. And I just remember thinking, why are people talking to me about this? I need to figure out like how to make sure she survives in the house with me, how we get through feeding and get her on a sleeping schedule. And I had no concept of how fast those 5 years were going to go by. And I was so fortunate to be immersed in the early learning world at that time in my life so that I could send her to school prepared. But when I look back at each one of my children and where they were at as they started kindergarten, they were all at a different place when you think about it from an academic standpoint. They all had different strengths. They were all hitting the kindergarten classroom ready or not ready in terms of early numeracy and early literacy, you know, some of these other cognitive areas. But they were all ready emotionally for that experience. And because they were ready for it, they were ready to learn. A child's first school experiences really influence the way they feel about school. And so again, if they're coming into school feeling emotionally ready and then they're ready academically to learn, we're going to help start them in the right place to feel good about themselves in the school environment. I really think about that high school dropout, you know, that kid who is 16 and they make the choice to drop out of school. And years ago when the Children's Reading Foundation was formed, the Kennewick School District was taking a look at an increasing high school dropout rate. And they would spend a lot of time trying to figure out, why are we seeing this? They were able to trace it all the way back to third grade reading, that kids who were not reading at grade level by the end of third grade were the kids that they could predict were going to drop out of high school at the age of 16. So then they took a look at, well, what's so important in getting a kid to the place where by the end of third grade they're reading at grade level? And they trace that all the way back to those first 5 years and the importance of the role of the parent. And is that child coming from that loving, stable home, and are they being read to every day? And you think about the bonding that takes place between the parent and child when you sit and just read a story together, and the language development that takes place, and that one-on-one time between the parent and the child. And the reason why I bring this up is because when we look at those first 5 years, and then you look at that 16-year-old who's making that choice to drop out, what has happened from that first day of kindergarten to their 16th birthday and that decision? Well, very often the kids who are coming into school not ready, they don't feel they fit in. They're working twice as hard as every other kid in the classroom to keep up. And this kid leaves the end of third grade, most likely not reading at grade level. And by the end of third grade, and as they're entering the fourth grade classroom, they have to read to learn now. They're no longer learning how to read. So they're coming into fourth grade, and they're being told you need to work harder. They're being told you're not doing good enough. Yet very often that's the child that's working twice as hard as every other kid in the classroom. So you see this degradation in self-esteem, this child who's not feeling confident in the school environment. Very often these are the kids that develop discipline problems in the classroom. They don't feel good about themselves there, and they don't feel they fit in. So what 16-year-old do you know that will choose to stay in an environment where they don't feel good about themselves, they don't feel they belong, and they don't feel they can succeed? So I think for me, that's kind of a snapshot of why it's so important to get those kids ready and excited about learning. I want to just back up for 1 second. I apologize, and I get really passionate about that part, and I probably should have addressed a couple of other things. I think one of the things that we've really realized with ACEs, drawing back to that for a minute, is that the kids who are ready for school, we're seeing are much more likely to handle some of the harder things in life as they grow older, because everybody, when we fill out that ACE test, everybody has something that they've been through and has negative experiences. But if we've got kids feeling comfortable in that classroom environment, they're better able to handle some of those things as they come along, because school becomes a form of support for them and stability as well. So I just wanted to back that up for a second, because I know we'll be drawing back to ACEs during some of the table discussions. And that just extends throughout their lifetime to be able to handle those things. So when we look at some of the challenges in preparing children for kindergarten, in Benton and Franklin, now the ESD serves 23 school districts in our region. So I'll try to differentiate for you when I'm talking about the region versus Benton and Franklin counties, but most of the information is in relation directly to Benton and Franklin counties. In Benton and Franklin counties, and this is the most recent information that came from Child Care Aware, there are 21,500 children under the age of 5. About 40% of those kids are coming into kindergarten not ready. Now, compared to the statewide averages, we're really doing good, believe it or not. But it's still 40% of our kids that aren't feeling they fit in when they hit that kindergarten classroom. This next slide is a snapshot of the 2015-2016 WAKIDS data for our region. So this is the entire 23 districts in southeastern Washington that we serve. WAKIDS is an incoming kindergarten assessment. It's meant to be, we used to do what was called dibbles, where you would kind of look at exactly how many letters and sounds and that type of thing that the entering kindergarten knew. But now we're looking at it from a whole child perspective. And where are they socially and emotionally? Where are they physically? You'll notice these domains. They're students' social, emotional, physical, language, cognitive, literacy, and math. So it's really meant to be an observation tool for teachers working in partnership with parents and whoever their child care provider might have been coming into the kindergarten classroom. And it's supposed to be designed to make sure that there's a relationship that's developed at the beginning of that kindergarten experience between that team and really take a look at the whole child from an observation standpoint and not just a did you get it right or did you get it wrong standpoint. So this is our region, and what's typical of the entire state is that early math and early numeracy, that is really where we need to be building some more competencies with our kids. Typically in our region as well, social emotional is the other area that scores lower. If you want to get more information about this, you can go on the OSPI website and you can actually go into the WA Kids report card and pull up your school district, your individual school. You can go within your school and pull up certain demographics, so you can get very, very specific with the information you might have interest in. Now, when we compare this to incoming limited English learners and incoming low-income learners, we have some disparity. It's certainly affecting kids and where they're at in their readiness level if they're coming from a limited English-speaking home or a low-income home, because very often when we've got kids in a poverty situation, families are focused on basic needs. This is what they have faith in our education system and our teachers to get kids to where they need to be in terms of education, but they're focusing on putting a roof over their child's head and feeding them. And so we're really fortunate in our region that we don't see the kind of disparity that they're seeing in other parts of the state, but it's because we have such an amazing education system here and such an amazing community of partners that come together to serve these families. And I know so many of you are part of that community, and I just really applaud you for that, because if you were to really go look at some of these numbers in other communities, we have work to do, but the good news is that these numbers are moving up. This was the first the WA Kids assessment is required of all schools that have full-day kindergarten. All schools in the state are required to have full-day kindergarten by the start of next year, the 2017-18 school year. All of the schools in Benton Franklin counties, actually in the whole ESD region, are now, as of this school year, full-day kindergarten. So this is not assessing 100% of those kids in Benton Franklin counties, because this is from last fall, but it's all but 2 of the schools in Benton Franklin counties. So I think it's a pretty strong representation of what we're going to see. So some of the other challenges is that 30% of children are being served by state and federally funded preschool programs like ECAP and Head Start and Early Head Start, but that leaves 70% of our kids in family, friend, and neighbor care. And so we've got work to do to reach those families, and of those, 21% of them are living in poverty. And so we know that there are organizations and partnerships that need to continue to take place and work together to reach those families and get to them early on. And we know that parents really want information. They don't always have access to it, so we need to continue to work to get that access to them. That basically, we have the Early Start Act that kicked in a year ago. The state has set a 90% goal that all incoming kindergartners will be ready for kindergarten by the year 2020. There's a lot of work to do to make that happen. We're working to increase Head Start and ECAP slots across the state, but collaboration within our local communities at the grassroots level is really key. And that to just remember that the most important thing in getting kids there are parents and that relationship between the parent and the child. I really thank you for your time. And if you want more information, I've got a couple of links here for you. We've got wonderful resources in our community, but you can go and get some more direct information through the Department of Early Learning, Thrive Washington, and here in our community, the Southeast Washington Early Learning Coalition. So thank you so much for your time.